There it is. Okay, welcome Claudia, and welcome Sarah, and Morgan, and Linda, and Zaida, and Stephanie, and Lizbeth. Thanks for coming. This is actually a real important webinar. I apologize if it's going to be a little tough, because this chapter is hard. So big warning. If you ask just about anybody that's taken statistics, they will tell you chapter 3, that's the rough chapter. So the good news is it gets easier from there. So chapter 3 is tough. I'm not going to go through, I can't go through every detail because I try and do it in not too long. I also plan on going a little more than an hour so that we can do a project 1 discussion, because a lot of you are interested in starting project 1 right away, and you kind of need, it helps to have more discussion. I talked a little about it last week and more this week. So I'm going to go over all of the things we need to do. So let me ask you first, are there any quick questions before I start on it? This is your chance. No questions? Okay, so for project 1, it's actually, for chapter 3, it's all about probability. You know some probability already. So for example, if I flip the coin, you should all know there's a chance it's a heads. You better be able to tell me. This isn't supposed to be a hard question, by the way. It's not a trick question. Nobody wants to answer? Yeah, 50-50 is kind of a colloquial way. I see it in the chat box. Yeah, 0.5 I like a little better because that's a number. And since it's a math class, we want to talk about numbers when we ask a question if possible. Okay? So can I ask questions about last chapter after class? Certainly, certainly. Could always ask any question you want after class or after the webinar. So 0.5 is one way of writing it. I think even easier is the fraction way of writing it, even if you don't like fractions. But for probability, it helps to have fractions. What's the fraction for 0.5?
1/2.
Yeah, 1/2. So we want to think about why is the probability of tossing a coin 1/2. By the way, it's going to get much harder pretty soon. I'm starting easy. The 1 comes from the fact that I said, what's the probability of getting a heads? And on this coin, one side is a head. The 2 comes from the fact that there are 2 sides of the coin. So when you're talking about probability, you're saying the numerator is going to be the number of ways that make it happen. And then the denominator will be the total number of happenings that can occur. So in this case, there's one way of a head happening, and there's 2 total happenings of the coin. Any questions on that? This can get harder, by the way, and it will. What, in terms of the hard part doesn't sound hard, is counting, right? Y'all know how to count. Very easy, right? One example, and this came from, it was about a week and a half ago. I don't know if you remember the big news a week and a half ago, but this is a hint. Okay. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't the big news. So I did not win. But you could look at this and say, well, I actually bought, just for fun, I bought a Super Lotto ticket and I bought a Powerball ticket, one of each. So when I bought it, everything's different now. There's no chance that these won now. But when I bought them, what was the probability that they both were winners? Now, there's no way in the universe you will ever, ever, ever count all the different ways that numbers can occur. Okay? And actually, that could be proved because there isn't enough time left in the universe. If it took you, say, 1 second per count, the universe would be gone by the time you're done counting. That's how long it would take. Okay? And in fact, the probability is around 1 in 75 quadrillion chances.
Outside and just
Okay, which is almost none. So to come up with how you get that probability is very difficult. I don't think I can do this example right now because it's too difficult to start. But we can do things like that. Okay. By the way, don't expect to win the lottery when you play. So if you're not familiar with numbers like 75 quadrillion, that pretty much says you're not going to win. Okay. But it was fun anyway. So it was worth $1. So let me do one that's a little harder. And that's the plan today, is to get harder and harder and harder. Okay. What if I roll 2 dice? Okay. I can roll 2 dice. And hopefully you all know what a die looks like. There they are. So I'm going to roll 2 dice and say, what's the probability the sum of the 2 dice is a 5? So again, what you have to do is you have to think about how many different ways are there for a 5 to happen. Does that make sense? And you count. Nothing like counting the lottery, but it's a little more, a lot harder than counting how many sides of a quarter or something like that, or how many heads are there. So we think about how many ways are there for a 5 to happen. Well, for example, one way is right there. I guess I have to go backwards. It's weird when you do this on a camera, everything's switched. Left, right becomes right, left. So for you guys, I think it's 4, then 4, 1, right? Okay. You could have a 4, 1. What else could you have?
3 and 2.
A 3,
2 and
2.
3.
You could have a 2, 3. What else could you have?
A 1 and 4.
A 1 and 4. So that's 4 different ways of having a 5 occur. Any questions on that? How many different ways are there having anything occur? So here we're going to use what's called the multiplication principle. So notice that rolling the first die and rolling the second die are independent of each other. If I told you the first was a 2, you don't know anything about the second one. Do you agree? There's no help by knowing the first. So because of that, we can use the multiplication principle that says there are 6 faces of this die. There are 6 faces of this die. And we can multiply 6 times 6. So I saw some of you do 12 on the denominator, but the principle is the multiplication principle. So you need to multiply 6 times 6, not add them. I can see why some of you made some errors there. So again, there were 4 different possibilities to get 5, right? 4 and 1, 3 and 2, 2 and 3, and 1 and 4. So it's 4 in the numerator. And there are 36 in the denominator. So you get 4 out of 36. So Claudia got it, which is good. Does that make sense? Do you see how it can get a little bit harder as they go? Okay, by the way, lottery, way hard. We're not going there now. Okay. Any questions on this die example? Any questions? Any questions? Okay. This stuff could be useful. Just my own history. When I was much younger, 21 years old, and I want to specifically say 21. Any guess on what I might have done when I was 21 years old?
Hit the casinos.
I hit the casinos, and I did that, and I won and won and won until they told me they were going to kill me, and if I ever came back, and that was the last time I ever went. Which, by the way, if they ever tell you they're going to kill you, leave. Just a suggestion. Okay, and that's not a joke, by the way. Okay, so, but I made thousands of dollars, which was good. So again, there are ways, and casino is one thing, but probability is more useful for other things, and we're going to be doing a lot of probability and statistics. Okay, when we take our stats, when we get into the true statistics nature of this class, probability is going to be one of the big kind of tools that we're going to use to find out statistics, to decide whether things are unreasonably unusual. So you say that must not have happened by chance, or are things somewhat likely and say, well, that could have happened by chance. And that's how pretty much all statistics are done. So what you want to say, for example, for nursing, because I know we have some nurses, is you find out the probability that this event could have happened by chance. And if that probability is, say, less than 0.05, then you say that no, it's very unlikely that it would have happened by chance because the probability is so small. So then you're going to say, aha, the medicine actually did something. Does that make some sense? Because that event of having improvement like it did amongst the sample that we looked at would be so unlikely compared to it without the medicine. Therefore, we're going to say the medicine was very likely to be the reason for improvement. And that's how probability is really used. So we're going to be looking at these probabilities and saying, yes, it's likely, no, it's unlikely. If it's unlikely, then we're going to say something unusual occurred and deal with it. Whether it means that, yes, the medicine's useful, or smoking's bad for you, or this advertisement in my business was effective. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you want to find out whether you have a high probability or low probability of it having just been random chance. And if it's a low probability, then you say, aha, something happened. Any questions on that, of the purpose of probability? So sometimes you can kind of lose the reasoning. Why are we doing this? Why is my professor torturing me and making me do all these hard problems when I care nothing about the probability of rolling a 4? Because again, these are examples because they're easy enough to do. And then later on, we're going to do hard stuff, but I want you to understand the idea of probability. Any questions on that, on the purpose of what we're doing? Okay, so this chapter, most of the things are going to feel purposeless. So just a warning on that. So for example, I'm going to pop in and share my desktop. Let me go and do that. And I'm going to pop in a question or two. This one. Oh, you know what? That's probably too small for you to see, is it? Okay, let me increase the font. I always forget when I copy and paste it copies small. So sorry about that. Let's make it 18. Okay, that should be a little better. Okay, so here we go. We're going to pick a letter at random from the word Lake Tahoe Community College. Find the probability the letter is a vowel. Okay, so how do you find probabilities? Again, the main thing to remember about probabilities is their fractions. Is that clear? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of blindly write down a fraction, which means, hopefully you all know. Ooh, that was awful. Let's try one more time. Okay, there's a fraction bar. You can pretend that's a little line. So a fraction, you do a fraction so that you say that the numerator are the number of ways of making what you're interested in occur. The denominator are the total number of ways that could happen of anything. So let's look at the first thing, and it says we want to find out the probability the letter is a vowel. So how many vowels are there in Lake Tahoe Community College? And by the way, I notice I see an A and another A. That counts as 2. So let's see if you guys can count. It's an easy exercise, I promise. How many vowels? And by the way, vowels, A, E, I, O, or U. The whole Y and W thing, those are confusing. So we're just going to call them A, E, Y, O, U for this class, just to make life easier.
Is there 6?
Okay. Yeah, I saw it in the chat box, but the chat box is, my computer is slow. Oh, sorry, it's still trying to pop up. So there's A, E, A, O, E, O, U, I, O,
11.
11.
E, and another E. I'm not sure you got 6, but I got 11. Any questions on that? Any questions? What just happened? Just a second. Oh, I see. Just a second. Just want to open the chat box so I can see what you're typing. There we go. I see a lot of 11s. Good. So 11 is the numerator. Okay. This is, again, the first question on this little sheet, so it shouldn't be too hard. What about the denominator? How many letters are there? Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of 25, so we're going to go with 25. Maybe I should double check. L-A-K-E-T-A-H-O-E C-O-M-M-U-N-I-T-Y C-O-L-L-E-G-E, 25. Any questions on that? So it's easy. You got to count. That takes some time, but it's not too bad. Okay. Now, what is the probability that we have an L given that it's not a vowel? Okay. So if we know it's not a vowel, what's the probability that it's an L? So what that does is it restricts the denominator. Because if we know that it's not a vowel, then how many letters are there left? A little subtraction here.
14.
Yeah, there's 14. And as Michelle said, if you count the number of L's, there's an L in Lake, and there's 2 L's in College. So there's 3 and 14. I think because my division sign is awful, I'm going to write 3 over 14. Better. Any questions on that? Okay. How about what's the probability that it's the first half of the alphabet, A through M, or a vowel? So just a note, I'm going to write down a little formula. Probability of A or B, not the alphabet A or B, but just variables, is equal to the probability of A plus the probability of B minus the probability of A and B. And that's a little formula for finding a question about or. So the probability of A is the probability that we have the first half of the alphabet, A through M. So you just count, right? Anything that's A through M, we're going to count. L-A-K-E, all A through M. T's not. A is. H, O's not. E is. C, and then O's not. M, U's not. N is not. I, T, Y are not. C, O's not. L, L, E, G, and E, L, R. And that is 17. By the way, I have a funny way of doing my hand calculator. It's 10, 5, and 2. Kind of tricky. You don't have to memorize that, but I can count to 100 on my fingers. So much easier. Okay. I don't know why people aren't taught that. Okay, so not hard math, by the way, I promise. Okay, so we had 17 over 25, because there's 25 letters, and then plus the probability of B, that's the probability of a vowel, which we already did. That was 11 over 25. And then minus, now we're going to take the probability that it's both the first half of alphabet and a vowel. Well, that means A, E, or I. Is that clear? Because those are the first half alphabet and vowels. So how many of those are? We have in Lake, there's 2 of them. In Tahoe, there's 2 more. Community, there's 1 more. College, there's 2 more. I count 7. Any questions on that? So 7 over 25. I don't really care about the answer that much, so I just want to leave it, and I'll let you put it in a calculator if you feel like it. Just a note on the assignment that's going to be due on the homework that you do on the computer. Read the question. If it says right as a reduced fraction, do that. If it says right as a decimal to 2 decimal places, do that. So whatever it tells you, you do what you need to do. Any questions? Any questions at all on these examples here?
Do we do anything towards the end where it says, based on the formula, it says P and A and B. So it looks like to me you only did P and A plus P and B minus P and B, but nothing with A.
It says P, so P of A or B equals P of A plus P of B. So P of A is 17 over 25, right? So that's the A right there.
Right.
P of B was 11 over 25, and then it said minus P of A and B.
Okay.
Do you see? So that's the combination of the two. That was the A, E's, and I's.
Okay. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
So the
you.
A is in this third piece. So the A told us it was only the first half. We dropped the O and the U. Does that help?
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? This is a good question, though. Any other questions? Okay, let's do some more. Okay. And again, they get hard. I know this may already be hard. I want to give you another warning, and it's kind of a general math warning, but it's much easier to watch someone else do math than it is to do it yourself. So I do want to warn you, even if you understand what I'm doing, does not mean that you're going to be able to do it yourself. So you may have to practice, you may have to post on the Q&A and ask what just happened, how come I can't figure this out? It looks so easy when I was watching you do it. But that's a big warning. It is definitely harder to do it when you're doing it. Let's do this. Okay, so we're going to be in something similar. Okay, so the next one. Sorry if it still says number 1. It's a weird thing when I do a copy and paste. It doesn't keep the numbering. Okay, so now we're going to pick 2 letters. Okay. At random with replacement. So with replacement means that I'm going to pick a letter, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to put it back in the box, and then I'm going to pick another letter. Okay. What's the probability that both letters are also letters of the word Monday? You see how it's getting a little more complicated now? Okay, the key is that it's with replacement. It makes it much easier. Because it's with replacement, they're independent. So we can use the multiplication principle and just say probability of the first ones of the word Monday times the probability of the second one is of the word Monday. Any questions so far? Okay, so now you just start counting. So for the first one, we know the denominator is going to be 25. We already did that calculation, right? So we just have to go through the letters and calculate the ones, count the ones that are the word Monday. I'm going to see if you can do it. Put in the chat box. How many letters in Lake Tahoe Community College are part of the word Monday? And there it is. How many letters are part of the word Monday? Just go through each of the letter. For example, L is not, A is, K is not, E is not, etc., etc. When I get 2 people that agree, we'll call it a go. So see if you can all put in the chat box. How many words are in the word Monday? How many letters are in the word Monday? From Lake Tahoe Community College. All right, so we're not agreeing yet. 7 or 8. I may have to count myself. Okay, a lot of 8s. I'm going to go with 8. Again, I'm not too concerned whether you can count. Again, if you make mistakes, that's understandable. I'm more concerned that you understand the probability ideas. So we know that the first probability for the first letter is going to be 8 over 25. So now I can use the multiplication principle and just multiply by 8 over 25. Okay, which is 64 over 625, but again, calculators are good for that. Okay, any questions on that? Any questions? Okay, now let's answer the second question. What's the probability the second letter is a vowel given the first is a vowel? And the hint is this is really easy. If you don't find it easy, you're not doing it right. See if you can put in the chat box the answer to that question. So the probability the second letter is a vowel given the first is a vowel. The key is you don't have to do anything really, except have a good logic process. You got to have logic. Once you have logic, it's really easy. Nobody seeing it? Okay, so remember, we're taking a letter, we're looking at it, and we're putting it back in. So if you know the first is a vowel, does that tell you anything about the second? Right? Doesn't tell you anything, right? If you know the first is a vowel, that doesn't tell you anything. So just what's the probability you get a vowel? Really, for the second one is all you need. We already answered that question. What's probably getting a vowel? 11 over 25. Good, Lizbeth got it. Any questions on that? So if you're given something that tells you nothing, and you want to find a probability of the second thing happening, you just look at the second and ignore what happened in the first. Does that make sense? Okay. Just like if I flip a coin, watch. Look, I just flipped a head. What's the probability this next one is going to be a head? Yeah, a half. Showing you the first head told you nothing. Do you see that? So you ignore the information of the first when you have what's called independent events. So the answer is just 11 over 25. Okay, now let's go to not independent events. So now we're going to change everything. I may not have space, we'll see. Yeah, there's enough. Okay, so now we're going to change everything. We're going to pick 2 letters at random from Lake Tahoe Community College. Okay, whoops, it didn't do it, sorry. One more time. Control copy. Try this again. Paste. All right. So maybe I'll just pop this out here. Get rid of that stuff if I can. Okay, so I'm going to pick 2 letters at random now without replacement. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a letter out of Lake Tahoe Community College. I'm going to see an L. I'm going to take that L and I'm just going to throw it away. Got it? What's the probability the second is an M, given the first was an L? So that changes things. That's very different than the last question we had. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, what is the numerator and what is the denominator? Okay. If I took an L out of that and threw it away, how many M's are there left? And I think I have to go back to the chat. Look at it again. Yeah, there's 2 M's left, right? They're both in community. How many letters are there left? Yeah, there's 24 letters. So now my probability will be 2 out of 24. Okay. Just note, if the computer asks you to write it as a reduced fraction, what do you have to do? Can't write 2 over 24. What do you have to write? Yeah, 1 over 12. So beware. If it asks you to write as a decimal, get your calculator out. Just a note. Okay, let's look at B. Okay, the first letter is an O, or the second is an A. So I want to remind you, we're on an OR question, and we have a little formula for ORs. So probability, I'm going to call this O1. And then the notation we use is that little vertical line segment. Oh, sorry, or, not yet, that'll be later. Or the second is an A, or A2. Okay, so it's good to be able to write it in symbols, and that is equal to the probability of O1 plus the probability of A2 minus the probability of O1 and A2. Because that was a little formula we had about 15 minutes ago, do you remember? Any questions on that so far? Okay, let's go through this. What's the probability the first letter is an O? Got to do a little counting, but this one should be an easy count. Okay, yeah, there are 3 O's. Tahoe has one, community has one, college has one, and there's 25 letters. So equals 3 over 25, and then plus. Now, what is the probability the second letter is an A? This always gets people. Let's see if you can figure this out. Okay. What I found is that everybody gets this one wrong. Okay? And guess what? It happened again. So far, everyone's got it wrong. So let me explain. I think I'll do it in a different way. This way. Okay? I don't expect you to be an expert in playing blackjack like I used to be, but here's what I'm going to do. Okay? If you don't know, there are 52 cards in this deck. Okay? And 4 of them are aces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of them but the last card, and I'm going to put them down. What's the probability that the last card I pick is an ace? Yeah, it's 4 out of 52. Putting these down didn't mean anything because I didn't tell you what they were. Do you agree with that? Okay, if we look at this other probability, the probability the second card, the second letter is an A. I didn't tell you what the first was. It doesn't say that in the probability notation. So if I don't tell you, you can't rule anything out. And if you can't rule anything out, there are still 25 possibilities. Do you see that? So the denominator will still be 25. The numerator were how many A's there were, which were 2. So it's plus 2 out of 25. So I want to just make sure that you all understand that, because I will let you know, I teach this class every year. Everyone gets it wrong the very first time they hear it. And then the hope is now you've got it. You want to think about, is anything ruled out? And if nothing's ruled out, the denominator doesn't change. Is that clear? Okay, so now we're going to go minus. Now we're going to do the probability of O1 and A2. So I'm going to give you another formula. This chapter has some formulas. So I'm going to write it in symbols first. Probability of O1 and A2 is the probability of A2 given O1 times the probability of O1. So what that says is when you have an and, that tells you that you can say it's the probability of one of them given the second times the second. And it doesn't matter which one you pick. It doesn't matter which order you have, right? The first and second is the same as the second and the first. And A2 given O1 might be a little easier to comprehend. So now let's look at this. That is equal, let's rewrite it, 3 over 25 plus 2 over 25. And then minus, what's the probability of A2 given O1? Remember, now this is without replacement. So that says that I've given that the first letter was an O. I took one O out and I threw it away. What's the probability that the next one will be an A? So now we're given information that changes things. And what do you get? Put in chat box. Okay, so we're only, 2 out of 24. Notice we're picking one of the O's and throwing one of the O's out, not all of the O's. Does that make sense? So Sebastian, that's why it's not 22 in the denominator, it's 24, because we're picking one O, we're looking at it, taking it out of the possibilities, the other two are still there. So that's going to be 2 out of 24. And then times, by the way, if you're not familiar on computers, usually is an asterisk for times. X is dangerous because it looks like algebra. So times, and what is the probability of O1? So what's the probability that the first letter you picked is an O? We already did it. That's 3 over 25. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. What I'm not going to do is waste your time with me typing arithmetic into a calculator. I do expect you to know how to use arithmetic. I mean, how you calculate it for arithmetic. Hopefully that's okay. Anybody lost? Are you in agreement that this is going to be a hard chapter? Most people feel so. Okay, these get hard, especially when you have to do it yourself. Okay, what's the probability that both letters are E's? So this reiterates that last formula I just gave you. So the probability of E1 and E2. Isn't that both being an E? So we use the formula again. That is equal to the probability of E2 given E1 times the probability of E1. I'm going to give you a moment. Let's see if you can figure out this probability. Okay, each of these two. I gave you the hint, which is use this formula. And if it helps, there's 4 E's in Lake Tahoe Community College. And you could write it as a multiplication problem, because I think that actually shows that you understand it better than if you write the answer as a decimal or something. Let's see if you can pop that into the chat box. By the way, statistics, this is a little more like what the class is going to be. Last week was all vocabulary, basically, or almost. This is closer to what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing a lot of number problems. There's going to be sentences at the end later. Okay, so I see Sean's got one. Okay, so let's think about it. If we're given E1, and again, it's without replacement, yeah. So notice that the denominator of the first one's got to be a 24. Okay, so it's 3 out of 24 times 4 out of 25, and that's correct. Let me write that in. Any questions at all on this problem? Any questions? Okay, let's do some more. Just a second. I think I need to kill all of this. Let me ask you one last chance because I'm about to erase everything. I'll give you 5 seconds to put in the chat box if you don't want me to erase. 4, 3, 2, 1, gone. Okay, because I need the real estate. Okay, so let's do the next one. It's going to be a bunch of these. Ah, shoot. I always got to remember I got to make it large first. 18. Copy and paste it in. Okay. All right, so let's do some of it and we'll have some more. All right, the contingency table, okay, below gives the results of a survey from Tahoe residents asking them what market they shop at and what kind of car they drive. Those who know that are from Tahoe will know that this was written a year ago or so because we now have 4 markets instead of 3. But we're going to pretend that we have 3. Sorry if you happen to be, a lover of our new market. But for now, we're going to do Safeways, Raley's, and Grocery Outlet. We have economy, SUV, sporty, and none. Sorry about this line. That's just a copy and paste issue. Funny thing, I'm looking for what I copied, and it doesn't look exactly like that. So ignore that. There's nothing special about that line over here. I don't know if I can erase it. I can. Okay. So we say that we're going to pick a survey participant at random. Find the probability the person shops at Raley's. So the first thing we have to do is calculate the totals. Okay? We need to calculate the totals. We need to have all the different possibilities. So let's start out, and I'm going to try doing this in my head. You can use a calculator if you want. Let's start out with economy car. Total number of economy cars, 35 and 23 and 48. 35 and 23 is 58, and 48 is 90, 106. Okay, then we have 62 and 55 is 100 and 110, 117, 127, 131. Then we have 12 and 17 is 29, and 11 is 40. And then we have 9 and 7 is 16, and 16 is 32. Let's add all these up. 106 and 131 is 237, and 40 is 277, and 32 is 309, if I counted right. When I calculate fast, I sometimes make mistakes, so let me know if I did. 35, 62, 12, and 9. 35 and 62 is 97, 107, 109, 118. And then we have Raley's, which is 78, 88, 95, and 7 is 102. And then we have Grocery Outlet. 48 and 14 is 62, and 11 is 73, and 16 is 89. Any questions on that? Okay, so hopefully I did my arithmetic right. Okay. By the way, if I do it that fast in my head, sometimes I make mistakes, so don't assume I'm perfect. Okay. So now we can find the probabilities. You need these total areas before we get the probabilities. I used to put the whole thing in columns, and then everyone gets confused. So I found that if I do it this way, there's less confusion, but we have to waste about a minute or two. Find the probability the person shops at Raley's. So the key on this is remember the definition of probability. It's a number of ways someone could shop at Raley's divided by the total number. So put in the chat box, which I have to reopen. Okay, good. Of the Raley's shoppers, there were 102, and there were 309 total. What I found is that with fractions, even though you may not like fractions, I think they tell the story a lot better. Do you agree? Whereas a decimal, if you put in your calculator and put a decimal, it's really hard to see what just happened. But I think it's easier with fractions with probability. Okay, find the probability that a person that person is a Safeway shopper who drives an economy car. The hardest part about these kind of questions is figuring out how to write in symbols, and then it's easy. So is this an and, an or a given question? So it's going to be probability. We're going to have Safeway shopper. I'll use SA for Safeway. Now, the next is it an and, or given? What do you think? Yeah, this is an and. So just note, had it been, if a person shops at Safeway, what is the probability that that's different? So that's just note, hold off for the next question. So then it's really easy once you have the and. We don't need the formula at all. Probability of Safeway and economy. How many Safeway and economy car people were there? You have to be both to be counted. And it's really simple, 35. So it's just 35. There's no given, so the denominator doesn't change. It's still going to be 309. Any questions on that? Again, the big warning, very easy to watch me do it. Right? No pain in watching me, is there? But it's not easy to do it yourself, I promise. Okay, so now, if a person shops at grocery outlet, find the probability that that person does not have a car. Okay, so now we got to think about what is that? That's the probability of what? So let's see if you can put in the chat box in symbols. And I'll tell you the first two symbols are P and parentheses. See if you can give me the rest. And you can start with P and parentheses to make it easier. So I started you out. See if you can write the symbols of this, because that's the hardest part about these problems. And you can use G for grocery outlet. You can use N for not having a car, or none. See if you can come up with the symbols to put in. If you know what to do, it's really easy. And if you don't, then you can guess. Okay. Okay, as I mentioned, these are hard questions. All right, I'm still waiting. Someone will get it right. Claudia, you're the closest. Not quite. The hint was Claudia was the closest. But I think Claudia's looking in the mirror. That's a hint. Still looking for the right answer? Yeah, there we go. There we go. I don't know why you did private, but that's okay. Yeah, it's the probability of N given G. So let me write this down or type it out. So here's the reason for that. So if a person shops at grocery outlet, someone just told you that we're only looking at grocery outlet shoppers. We're given their grocery outlet. We want to find out the probability they don't have a card. That's the we don't know yet. Do you see that? So grocery outlet is the given. That goes on the right-hand side. So what we want to find out about goes on the left-hand side. So now let me show you how to do it when we have a contingency table. So we want to think about, someone just told you that the person shopped at grocery outlet. So that means that you, in your eyes, you only want to look at the grocery outlet column. Do you see that? You want to ignore everyone else, because as soon as they said the person shops at grocery outlet, you can disregard the Safeway and Raley's people. Is that clear? So the denominator will now be 89. The numerator will be the numerator for that grocery outlet column that doesn't have a car, and that's 16. Any questions? Any questions on this? Okay. My guess is you're agreeing with me that this is a tough chapter. Maybe you're not, but my guess is you are. Okay, so now let's do some more. So I'm going to have to erase A, B, and C. Sorry about that, but I only have so much room. Otherwise, everything gets too small to see. It doesn't fit. Let's try one more time. Let me kill some of the spaces here. Just a minute. Let's just do these. Okay. So are the events drives an economy car and shops at Raley's mutually exclusive? Explain. And explain means explain numerically. So with numbers. So let me give you the definition of mutually exclusive. I'll do it in red. What it means is that the probability of A and B is equal to 0. So whenever I ask you, are they mutually exclusive, you have to calculate the probability of A and B. If you get 0, you say yes. If you don't get 0, you say no. Any questions on that? So the explain is explained with numbers. So what is the probability of shops at Raley's and mutually exclusive? So shops at Raley's and drives an economy car. So E and R. What is that probability? And I just realized I can't see the chat box, so hopefully you're putting it in. Okay, oh, just a note, probabilities can never be bigger than 1, so 23 can't be the answer. Probabilities are fractions, remember that. So if I ever ask you what is the probability and you write a number bigger than 1, it's not right. There we go, 23 over 309. Okay, oops. I think I just put it in the chat box. I want to put it here. Okay, and the important thing about that number is this is not 0. Hopefully you all know 23 divided by 309 is not 0. You don't need your calculator to know that, right? So wait, can you say? The answer is yes. I'm going to write ME, mutually exclusive. I'm sorry, the answer is no. What am I doing? Sorry about that. I got too excited. So the answer is no, because it's not 0. Any questions on that? Okay, so the next question is, are the events shops at grocery outlet and drives at SUV independent? Explain. So now for independence, we're going to have different formulas, and actually there's going to be 3 of them. So the first one is the probability of A, and B is equal to, make this a little longer, the probability of A times the probability of B. The second is the probability of A given B is equal to the probability of A. And the third is the probability of B given A is equal to the probability of B. And it turns out if one of those is true, all of them are true. If one is false, all of them are false. So to find out if 2 events are independent, what you do is you pick the one that looks easiest and see if that's true or not. If it's true, you say they're independent. If it's false, you say they're dependent. Okay, I think that either 2 or 3 are the easiest. Number 1, you have 3 different calculations. 2 and 3, you only have 2. You see that? Number 1, you have a probability of A and B, you have a probability of A, and you have a probability of B. That's 3 different calculations. So I'm going to, I don't know, maybe I'll pick number 2. Probability of grocery outlet, call it G, given, where is it? Drives an SUV, call that SUV, is equal to, well, probability of grocery outlet given SUV. Again, that means that we're restricting only to the SUV drivers. Of those SUV drivers, 14 are grocery outlet shoppers, and there were 131 SUV drivers. So it's going to be 14 over 131. Any questions so far? Then we got to find out the probability of G, because we're using number 2, right? Probability of G is equal to, so now we're looking at grocery outlet shoppers, there are 89 of them, divided by, there's no given, so it's 309. What's the easiest way of finding out if 2 fractions are the same? Any thoughts? The hint is it's easy. Should I show you? This guy. Stick it in your calculator and see if you get the same number. So you tell me. By By the way, I recommend you have your calculator with you, or at least your smartphone with your calculator or something when in the webinars, because I'll ask you to do some calculations sometimes. There are other ways of finding out they're the same, but I think the calculator is easiest. Don't you agree? You look at the fractions. Do you get the same decimal or not? Okay. Oh, look at that. I got some no's and a yes. If I remember right, I can't do this in my head, by the way. It depends how many decimals you look at. But if you look at all the decimals, they're different. So they, the fractions differ. So the events are dependent. Dependent means not independent, by the way. Any questions on that? Any questions? Okay, what I want to do now, we're getting to the end of this part of the webinar. So I think I want to give you a secret word. But we're not done yet because I want to talk about project 2. Remember, today's going to go longer than usual. I didn't get any requests, so I'll just do it all today. 1 webinar or 2 webinars. I think I'll just do 1, make it a little longer than an hour, if that's okay. But we need project 1 talked about. So let's do the secret word. And the secret word for today is given. So the secret word is given because it's all about probability of something given something. We've been doing a lot of that. I always try and pick something that you may not just guess. Okay, so that's the secret word quiz. Any questions first about chapter 3 before I move to the project? Okay, so for the project, I want to share my desktop with our course, which is, I think it's that one. Okay, maybe I'll go to where to find it so I can show you where to find it. Actually, you go to modules. And do you remember when the project is due? I don't see anyone chatting or talking. But if you go to week 4, the project is due on February 4th. That's still a while from now. So you're okay. So if you click on project 1, this is where you submit your project. This is where you submit your project. It says a file upload, and you upload it. It's not going to look exactly like this because I have like editing capabilities and stuff like that. But you upload the file, and then it happens. So it won't look like this for you. In fact, maybe I'll pop in what it'll look like.
One entry per group.
Question?
Is it just 1 entry per group, or does everyone enter the entire?
Yeah, it's 1 per group. If 2 people enter it, you better be entering the same one if from the same group, and then only grade 1 of them because it's the same. But only 1 has to enter. All right, so if you go to week 4, I'm going to show you what it looks like from your side. And you will see project 1. And there we are. So you'll see it's got requirements. I don't know if it even let me do it. Submit assignment. You hit submit assignment, and then it'll let you download it. Upload. I think that's fun thing. I've never done it before because I'm not a student. But I believe no one has trouble with it. Submit assignment and upload it. But I want to read what project 1 is about. So these are the descriptions of project 1. So think of a quantitative investigation that someone might contract out to have done. So remember what the word quantitative means. Either say it or put it in your chat box.
Quantitative. It's a number.
It's a number. So here's a suggestion. You're going to be writing a survey question. Ask your partner. And specifically, ask the partner the survey question. And if your partner doesn't answer with a number, it's not an okay project. Does that make sense? So you cannot ask something like, what is your major? Because that's not a number for the answer. Does that make sense? So that's one thing, is if it's not, it's one of the kind of fundamental disasters that I see in projects. Because if it's not quantitative, you have to start over, and that's horrible. So that's number one. Actually, number one is have a partner. Okay, so if you don't have a partner, or you don't have, I'd recommend 3 in your partnership. But if you don't have at least 2 at this point, worry a lot. Okay, you need to be panicked. Get into that project discussion forum and post saying, help, I need a partner. Okay. I hope you're not asking how many students 8 math majors. But
I typed it still, sorry.
How many students are math majors? But it was pretty funny. Okay, well, here's the problem. What are you going to ask your partner?
How many math classes have you taken?
Okay, that's different than how many students are math majors. Do you see? That's how many math classes students take. Do you see? That's very different, right?
Yeah.
Do you see? So you want to think about what you want to ask versus what you're interested in, and it better be the same thing. Does that make sense? How many students are math majors would be, are you a math major? That's a yes or no question. Do you see the problem? Okay. It has to be numbers. Okay. And you have to think about somebody who might contract you to do this project. If you can't, it's not a good project. If nobody would be interested in what you're doing, you don't have an interesting project, and it's not okay. Does that sound okay? So in your paper, you need to be writing it as though you're writing it to your client. That's the kind of vocabulary you're going to use. Okay. So the purpose of the report is to make recommendations based on your finding. And those recommendations are for your client. Got it? So it'll help you get focused. So be sure to make recommendations throughout the paper. Every time you look at something and discuss something, make a recommendation. Okay? Don't just say the mean was 12 and go on and talk about standard deviation. Talk about, now that you know the mean is 12, how is your client going to make a decision that they wouldn't have been able to make if the mean wasn't 12? Okay? Also include a statement on who has hired you and why. So make sure somewhere in the paper, usually the beginning, identify who your client is. Okay? Typical clients that people will have would be, say, the student services person at the college. If you're using LTCC, that would be Tracy Thomas. She's in charge of student services. And if you're using our college, LTCC, you can ask me, I'll tell you who's in charge. Okay, I've been here 22 years. I know the people here. Okay, so again, other people that you might think is your client might be, say, the owner of the establishment that you're surveying in, if you're surveying, say, in a restaurant, or you're surveying in a store. Does that make sense? So then the owner might be interested in the information you're gathering. So someone's going to be interested. Okay. So here's some things you have to contain. Can you use work we deal with successful outcomes based on the number we serve? So here's my rule about work. 2 rules, actually. First rule is, unless you own the company, get permission from your manager before you ask survey questions of people. I don't want anybody fired because of this project. That okay? Second is, you're not allowed to ask children. Okay, there are laws against surveying children. You have to get written permission from both parents. It has to go through a review board, and we don't even have a review board at this college. And I don't want you to break any laws because I don't want to get sued personally. And you probably don't want to either. So no children. Okay, sound fair? Those are the only 2 rules I have in terms of things like, your customers. If they're children, you can't do it. Does that sound fair?
I have a question. So if I own a CrossFit gym with my husband, I can ask the people from our gym.
Yep, if you own it, then you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Because no one's going to fire you.
No.
Then you're good.
Okay, cool.
Yep. But if you were an employer, do you see if you owned it and one of your employees started asking things that made you uncomfortable,
yeah,
you're not going to be so happy about that person, are you?
No,
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If you own it, you do whatever you want. You're the owner.
Okay, cool.
Except children.
No, yeah, we won't ask.
Yeah, because you could get sued by the parents and I could get sued, and so no children.
Okay.
Okay. By the way, if you're at a college and you're asking students at a college and someone is 17 years old, their parents have already written away their rights. So you're allowed to ask them. They don't count as children. Okay. That's just a law about children that are taking courses at a college. That's something the parents have to sign. So you're allowed to ask children that are taking a course at the college. Any question about that? Okay, so you must talk about the sampling technique that was made, how the technique was applied. Okay, you have choices, and you will notice that I have links to 2 of them because those are the choices you're going to make. Nobody chooses random sampling, simple random, because that is basically impossible. If you think you can do simple random sampling, you better let me know how you're going to do it, because I'm going to tell you it can't be done. It's almost always impossible. I have had, in my 22 years, 1 student did it right. Okay? But stratified sampling, cluster sampling, those are good. Okay? So you can use stratified sampling, cluster sampling. Those are almost always possible. Okay? Stratified sampling, it's a step-by-step process. Step 1 is identify what strata you are interested in looking at. So that might be gender, for example. It might be, say, age. It might be ethnicity or race. Those are typical strata that people will use. That's step 1, is identify your strata. Just use one, okay? On a more sophisticated study, use multiple ones. I don't want you to do that. It's too hard, okay? So just use one if you can use strata. Step 2 is find out the percentage of each type in the institution you're looking at. Okay, so again, it's pretty easy to find out at this college the percentage of men and women. Okay, that's not that hard to do. Our librarian will help you with that. Okay, so our librarian will help you with that. If you're looking at your particular place of work, that may or may not be known what the strata is. That depends on the workplace. Does that make sense? Okay, so step 3 is very simple, is you take your sample size, and by the way, it says later on the sample size is greater than 30. You can pick 31 if you want, and multiply by those percentages, and that will get your quotas. So you'll notice these steps are quick. Sometimes the research is impossible, and sometimes it's very quick. You go online and check. Those are quick. Step 4 is you go survey and get those quotas. So if you did it by, say, age at a college, and you found out that, I'm just making this up, that 60% of the students are under 30 years old and 40% are over, and you just stratified by those 2 age groups, then you just take your 30% of your 31, that's about 9. 70%, I said 70%. So 70% of 31, which is 21, and then 30% of 31 is 9, and you just ask 21 people that are under 30 and 9 people that are over 30. So it's not that hard. Are you following me? Okay, so that's stratified sampling. The other technique is cluster sampling. and that is you identify clusters. And then you must survey every single person in a group of clusters that represent the population. Does that make sense? So for colleges, clusters are usually classes. Okay? And you want to find a group of classes, not too many, a couple is okay in this project. In a more sophisticated project, you do a bunch of classes. But in this one, maybe, you know, maybe if there's 3 in your partnership, each do a class. I do want you to all be involved in some way if possible. Okay? In your, Sarah, in your idea, you may not be able to get your partners involved if you're doing your business. You do have to get them in agreement that that's okay, because your partnerships, you have to agree. But you have to find the groups and then survey everyone in those groups. Okay? Can't just be one group. It has to be more than one. Any questions on that? Okay. Then discuss any bias that might have occurred due to your sampling technique. If you said there was no bias, I will not believe you. It is basically impossible to have an unbiased study. I do not take points off for having a biased study. I take points off for not identifying bias. Do you see the difference? You don't have to identify every bias there could possibly be, but you should talk about some kind of standout biases. So for example, if you survey students at LTCC, then you are going to be leaving out some students. Okay, so for example, there is a group of students there is no chance you will ever survey. Anyone know who that group is? No, online you can. You ask each other, your online students. Yeah, Morgan might have a chance because you're really involved in this college. Prisoners, good. Chris do too. Yeah, prisoners. You will never be able to survey prisoners because you cannot go to the prison. Please don't go to the prison because you have to kill someone to do that, right? Or something really bad. Okay. You work there, yeah. Oh, do you work there, Chris? Okay, but you don't work at all the prisons. We have more than one, Chris. I don't know if you realize that, but we have a bunch of prisons that we do. So again, Chris, you could survey some prisoners, but not each of the prisons. And I don't know anything about the prisons, but my guess is they each have unique characters. I'm not an expert in prisons. But Chris, you are, and you can survey. You're the only one. Okay, they're amazing people. Okay, so by the way, if you're partners with Chris, he can maybe survey a couple of them. Okay, which is kind of cool. I've never had that happen before, Chris. Make sure that you get permission, by the way, from the warden or whoever's in charge. I have no idea. I know nothing about the prisons. But get permission because you don't own the prison. Nobody does. Okay, they might give you permission. Okay, but the point is you are going to have bias. And that's okay, but identify them. Any questions on that? Here's a warning. See that word random? You use it, I will almost always take off points. There's no way in the world you can survey randomly. Okay? You could try, good luck. Okay? It's very, very, very difficult. So beware of that word. I'm telling you now. Okay, in your project, you must have all relevant charts. 3 of the charts you must have are a histogram, a stem and leaf, a box and whiskers. You may include others, but you must include these 3 for full credit. The histogram will show up on the spreadsheet I made. Unfortunately, there may be security issues for the box and whiskers and stem and leaf. So go online, type in generate box and whiskers, and do it. Okay? The project must use a spreadsheet program. That is an absolute requirement, and you must copy and paste the relevant parts of the spreadsheet that you used into your project. So whether you're using Google Docs to write your project, which a lot of people appreciate because it's a nice collaboration tool between partners. Some people like to use Microsoft Word, but then you have to take your Microsoft Word document and email it to your partners and have them do a piece and wait for them to done and do it. With Google Docs, you can actually just do it together and not worry about them waiting for them. You have 3 partners in our group. We use Strata. Must we use, so if you're going to partner by age, I think that's what you're talking about, right? If you're going to Strata by age, you need to go and find out. First, you have to identify your population. Then you have to research and find out what percentage of the population are each of the age groups. Okay? That may or may not be available. Okay? At colleges, it usually is. Other places, sometimes it is. Then you make the quotas and do it. Doesn't matter who's doing it. You see what I mean? As long as you get your quotas. Does that make sense?
But they all have to be in the same age group. Like I can't do old people, somebody else can't do young people.
That's fine.
All need to be in the same age group from the strata.
No, it's not the same age group. It's multiple age groups. That's how stratified sampling works.
Oh, okay. So we can't all right.
Right? So if you find out that 30% of the people are between 18 and 22, and that's one of your strata, then you make sure that 30% of your sample are between 18 and 22.
Okay.
I don't care which person in the partner is asking those people.
Okay.
You could ask a little of each for all 3 of you. That's fine too. Or you could each pick, you can only do 18 and 22 and someone else does 22 to 30 and someone else does over 30 or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Up to you on how you decide who you're going to ask.
Okay.
But the number of people in each age group, that's up to the formula, right? Percent times the sample size.
Okay.
That makes sense. Good question, because you don't want to make the mistake now. Okay. You must interpret the charts, each of them individually, in the context of your study. Talk about what they say about the population. Talk about what recommendations you're going to make to the client. So why is the client going to be interested? What decisions is the client going to make after looking at the histogram, after looking at stem and leaf, after looking at the box and whiskers? There will be differences, but some of the things will be the same, so compare and contrast. Talk about what audience is best for each chart. Okay? Give me a list of the summary statistics that are relevant. So let me give you some that we have to use. Standard deviation, number 1. So in here, you must have an entire paragraph just on the standard deviation. That's going to be tough for a lot of you. Okay? Remember, the standard deviation is about the spread of the data. Some things about the standard deviation. It gives you the z-score. Because remember, z equals x minus mu over sigma. It gives you, I didn't talk about it in the webinar, but it's in the book and it's in the long one that talks about Chebyshev and empirical versus Chebyshev. So investigate that. Okay? Make sure you look at a z-score. Remember where it says change this? If you don't change it, I'm taking off points. Do an interesting z-score. Okay? Or 2, depending on what your project is. Interpret all the statistics. You should interpret the interquartile range. Okay? And you could do that as you're talking about the box and whiskers plot too. You can interpret the first quartile, the third quartile, the median, right? The maximum, the minimum, those are all statistics. Don't worry about the variance. We haven't talked about that. It's not that useful. Okay. Any questions on that? For each of these, by the way, talk about how, after looking at the mean, what's the client going to do? After looking at the standard deviation, what's the client going to do? After looking at the median, how is the client going to react? Do you see that? Throughout the paper, not at the end of the paper, but throughout the paper. Okay, so a synopsis of the importance of your findings. Okay, so in other words, this is a paper, and I do expect it to be written in proper paper form. And proper papers have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Hopefully you all learned that in, I don't know, any middle school or high school or something, or maybe English 101. But you all learned that somewhere in writing, right? So an introduction gives an idea of what you're going to be talking about and kind of a main vision. A body is all the details. And then the conclusion are the highlights and the highlights of what you have learned. So a note, something I do when I grade this, when I look at your conclusion, if the conclusion could have been written before you wrote your data, then it's not a good conclusion. Does that make sense? So you found the standard deviation. Remember, that's a highlight. That standard deviation of that number and what was important about that number and what decisions are made because of that number. Don't make it general, make it specific. And talk about your conclusion there. Okay, so an example I gave is, let's say your study was on the age that students first learned the quadratic formula, and let's say the mean age was 15.3. Don't say, the mean could be used to understand when people learn the quadratic formula, because that doesn't use the number 15.3. You see that? Instead, you would say students learn the quadratic formula on average just after they turn 15. Based on this, high schools should be leery about moving chemistry, which requires this knowledge, to the freshman year, because that happens before you're 15. Do you see how you've used the number 15 to make a recommendation? Do you see how that works? And I want that kind of thing to be throughout the paper, and especially in the conclusion. Any questions on this? Okay, and there should be a discussion on how you can improve on what you've done. In other words, maybe you would look at some additional survey questions to learn more about your population that you didn't get because of what you only asked the one question. Okay.
I have a question. So we're basically like a hypothetical, like could we make up like a proposal, like hypothetically speaking, like, oh, how many people ride bikes on a regular day basis? Should this person open up a bike shop in this area based off of this gathering that we've gotten?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Really nice observation. That's exactly what you want to do. Okay. Now, occasionally it won't be hypothetical. That does happen sometimes. Sometimes you'll actually have a project that you're working at now in your job. Okay, and you convince your partners that they're interested too. Does that make sense? But it doesn't have to be. It could be hypothetical. Okay. Does that make sense?
Right.
It doesn't have to be hypothetical, but most of them are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So some examples that I've seen that have been pretty good projects is someone was a waiter in a restaurant. And so the survey question doesn't have to be a talking question. It could be a watching someone do something. And they wanted to find out how much they get in tips. Do you see? So the survey question was looking at how much they made in the tip, right? Do you see that? And they used cluster sampling, and they clustered by time because they decided that was pretty important. There was lunchtime, there was nighttime, and then there was weekend versus weekday, because they figured that was kind of the different type of client they'd have. So they did everyone who came in this 10-minute bracket. Does that make sense? And they looked at the receipts for those 10-minute bracket for a lunch on the weekend, a lunch on the weekday, a dinner on the weekend, and a dinner on the weekday. This restaurant didn't serve breakfast, sorry. And their client was the wait staff at the restaurant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you'd basically, like, I'm just clarifying for the conclusion's sake. Mm-hmm. We'd bring the statistics, say like, okay, the person at 10 a.m. makes $60, while the person at 12 a.m. makes 150.
Okay, so let me mention something really important. Cluster sampling or stratified sampling is not a comparison study.
Okay.
So that's really, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the #1 mistakes people make. Your data is going to be one column of data, and that's it.
So you could say at 12 a.m. the survey made $150. In my conclusion.
Okay, so at 12 a.m. the survey made this amount is not part of your project.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah.
Okay, your project had all of the percents from the receipts, right? Tip percents of all of your customers. And that just all gets put in together. So once you have done your cluster sampling or stratified sampling, at that point you're done with differentiating the different groups.
Okay.
Now you just have one group. So instead what you're going to say is, aha, the average tip percent was 13%, so people are cheapskates at this restaurant. Do you see that?
Okay, so you're making a conclusion. You're just basically grouping everything together. You're making a huge basket and just putting everybody in one.
And I'll let you know. Yeah, project 2 is a comparison study.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll get there, but that's project 2.
Sweet.
So you're going to say that, and then you're going to say the standard deviation was this, was maybe 8%, and then you would say people are all over the place. Do you see that?
Right. And you wouldn't clean? Yeah, never mind. You already answered that. Sweet.
Right, because an 8% standard deviation means that you got a pretty good group of people that are between 5% and 21%, and that's all over the place. Do you see that?
Right. Your spread's huge.
Right. And that means you got a chance that maybe if you're really good, you can get most people to go up to 21%. Because the spread is huge because maybe people are upset because you were rude to the lower people.
Right.
I'm just making things up, but you get the idea?
Yeah, and we wouldn't actually, never mind. That's already the answer. Sweet. Perfect.
Okay. Does that make some sense? And a lot of the things are going to be redundant. So for example, what the histogram tells you might be similar to what the standard deviation tells you, because they're both going to help you to see the width. And that's okay. That's okay to have some redundancies. Does that make some sense? Just to let you know, I have a link to right here. It sends it to my spreadsheet program. And I have some videos on how to use it. You're only using one variable statistics. Look at starting out. One of the mistakes people make is they forget, and I showed you in the last webinar, you got to make a copy. If you don't make a copy, you can't edit it. You got to do the make a copy. Okay, and I show you how to do that in the videos. I did it last week. The one variable statistics is really the only one you need to see for how to do stuff. All the rest of them are the rest of this class, which we haven't done yet. Does that make some sense? You don't have to use this spreadsheet program, but this one's made for this project. So if you're an expert on Excel, you could do Excel, but you're on your own on figuring it out. Okay, this one's focused for this project. Does that make sense? Unfortunately, it used to do stem and leaf and box and whiskers, and Google screwed me over. Sorry about that. So I got to figure out how to make that. I don't know if I can ever figure out how to make it work because there's some issues with security, and they don't hate me. I didn't do anything. But so the main reason you have to use a spreadsheet is that if you don't use a spreadsheet, you jeopardize transferability and acceptance for this class to work for what you need. And this class is over if it doesn't satisfy the requirements of your degree. Do you agree?
Yeah.
To me, number one is I have to make sure that every college and university accepts this class for the statistics requirement. And my guess is you agree with that, right? If that doesn't happen, you would be all dropping. Sound right? So I have never had a college say this doesn't work. So I've got it. And this was the missing link. When I used to have problems, now I don't have problems. So this will work. But if you don't have a spreadsheet, then you lose this class. So you have to show the spreadsheet. You must, I don't care about MLA and that stuff, but use references. I don't care how you use references, but you need to reference anything you're using. So if you're doing stratified sampling and you looked up online to find out what percentage of people were men and women, for example, give a reference on how you found out. Okay? I'm not a stickler for the details on what must be shown, but you have to show something. Does that make sense? Okay. If you're using a spreadsheet, give a link to the spreadsheet, say you used it. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, if you're using something for the box and whiskers, give a link to what you used for that. It's not hard to do, but you need to do it. You could do it at the end or within. I don't really care, but it has to be somewhere. So just a timeline. Suggestions on the timeline. So let me go and remind you. The project is due February 4th. Okay, so first thing, timeline number 1 is by now you should already have partners. If you don't, panic. Got it? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I would do in the next few days, now that you've got a description of what the project is about, work with your partners, communicate, and think of a good project. Okay, think of something you might be interested in that you could ask. Again, ask each other. Make sure that it's that you can imagine having a bunch of numbers in a column. Does that make sense? The answer should be numbers. Okay? If you don't have a bunch of numbers as the answer to the survey, then it's not okay. Okay, number 3, post on the project discussion forum your idea. Number 4, look at the project discussion forum again within a day. Make sure I said it was good. Got it? So in your idea, things you should post is your survey question. You should post what your population is. And that could be all students at the college. It could be all people who work at this establishment, whatever your establishment you're interested in, CrossFit or something. It could be all students at California community colleges, and because you have different colleges you're looking at. It could be all Californians. Okay, I don't recommend all people in the world. Very hard to get a good sample on all people in the world because it takes some traveling. Might be fun, but you don't have time. Okay, so don't just say all people, be specific. Okay, number 3, or I don't know what number I'm on anymore, sorry. But the next thing you should do, the next thing that needs to be in that list of things is how are you going to do your sampling? So cluster stratified and give some details of what you're planning on doing. Got it? Have those in your post, and then I'll answer it. And hopefully you figured out I'm pretty quick about answering questions. Okay, I will get back to you within a day, usually within hours. Okay. After you get the okay by me, do you have recommendations on how we should break down the task? That's up to you, but definitely, don't do all the work and don't do none of the work. So talk to each other. I do recommend you all participate if you can in the sampling. It shouldn't take long, the sampling. Once you've decided how you're going to sample, it shouldn't take long. Oh, if you're going to be doing it at a college and going to classes, ask the professor for permission. They'll just about always say yes, but ask permission. It's just a good thing to do.
I have a quick question. So I'm partnered with someone that lives in a different area, and that would affect my study probably, yeah?
Well, it depends what your study is. So if your study is about California college students, my guess, does your person in California?
Yes.
Okay, so if a person is about California college students, you do your area, your person does their area. You see you got a diversity just because you got different areas. Do you see how that works?
Right. Oh, then you could that possibly, can you classify that as your strata maybe? If one, say, like, one person's in SoCal and I'm in Northern California, could that be a strata?
Yep, and then find out, and you have to go find out how many Northern Californians there are and how many Southern Californians there are. Do you see?
Perfect. And the number is
percentages and cite your reference on you finding it out. And I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure that's available probably in 5 minutes online.
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. These are good questions, and please, everybody should feel free to ask questions. This is a pretty important webinar. Are you feeling that? It's a longer one because we're doing 2 webinars at once, basically. I would not let me post about joining a group. Were you having technical problems with posting? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't know. So I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what your question is, Claudia. It would not let me post to joining. Okay. Oh, yeah. I tried to make this with groups, and Canvas is like weird about groups. So don't worry about Canvas groups. Just join a group. Don't worry about being in Canvas. Make sure that your partners know you're in the group. So it's not that the partners aren't letting you join. It's some technical thing in Canvas. Don't worry about Canvas groups. Sorry about that. I've tried to fix that, and no one seems to know how to do it. Oh, so where do you go? You go to the project discussion forum and post. I'm looking for a partner. Have you been to the project discussion forum? Maybe I'll do that right now. Lots and lots of people have posted. So I'm not sure what the it is. These are people, not an it. So project discussion forum right here. You hit reply. Okay. So you hit reply, and then you start typing. So yeah, do that now. And what you can, I'm going to cancel this. I'd read through these, and they're all unlooked at because I'm a student. Let me leave student view. So it'll look normal. And you might even go to the bottom to top and see if anyone's still looking for someone. If not, post. I'm looking for someone, help. Okay? So Claudia, does that make sense? So I tried to show that in the orientation webinar. But yeah, really, really important. Yeah, you need to post like I would post while we're talking now. Okay? See if there's anyone that was looking for someone still. Okay. I think there was one group that wanted to split into two groups. They had 4 and they wanted 2 of 2, and I said you can add one more if you need. Maybe you can grab one of them. But there's a lot of posts already. As you can see, there's 39 posts. So post some more. Okay. So anyway, the next step after deciding on your study is conduct your survey. Go collect your data. And again, my recommendation, if possible, is do it together. In other words, if each of you do 12 or something like that, or 11, that's 33 total, you're done. It doesn't take long to ask 11 people. Do you agree? If you're doing cluster sampling, you're doing classes, that's a class each. Go and do it. I recommend, if you can do classes, having it on paper and just handing it out and having them write down the answer. It's faster, and then you're not ruining class time for whatever class you're in. If you're doing online, you're going to have to post and hope people answer, which is hard to get people to answer, but you can try. Any questions on that? The next step is put it into the spreadsheet. Again, a single column. If you have 2 columns, worry. It can be a single column of numbers. If you use my spreadsheet, it'll just show up, and you're going to see the standard deviation and the mean and the median and the quartiles. Decide what good z-scores you want. Type in the x and it'll give you your z. It does it all for you. If you use something else, then you're on your own. Okay, it still can work. Step 4, write. Write. Okay, write. Okay, a lot of times groups will like share the writing. So one will write the introduction and conclusion, another will write the part on the charts, and another one will write a part on the statistics, the mean and the median and that. Whatever, but you should share the writing. The next step, make sure you read each other's writing. Don't trust. You should trust somewhat, but don't blindly trust your partners. Help each other out. The next step should be done by February. I recommend February 1st, since it's due on the 4th, and maybe even before that, is email it to me. Email me your project. If you're using Google Doc, then email me a shared. If you know how to share things, share it, and then I'll get that email, put my email in, and then I will look at it Okay, it takes some time sometimes because I got to read each project, and I will give you extensive feedback on how you can improve your score. The next step, look at my feedback and then fix it. And then the final step is submit it. Don't wait till 11:58 to submit it. That's when you lose your internet access. That's Murphy's Law, right? So if you wait till the very last minute to submit, your internet goes down and then you're going to lose a lot. Okay? It's okay if it's submitted Sunday morning, but I don't recommend waiting till Sunday night because things can go wrong. Okay? There's no reason not to start now and plan on just getting it finished a few days early. And then there's less stress. That's a little lesson in life, by the way. There's less stress.
If we finish the project early, can we submit it earlier?
You can submit it whenever you want. But again, I strongly recommend submitting it, your rough draft, to me first. And then I'll give it to you. And when you feel comfortable with it, go for it. By the way, after I only look at a draft once. You can't keep emailing me over and over again the draft. You can keep posting in the project discussion forum questions about your project. So the email only happens once. All other questions are in the discussion forum. And not, please look over my whole project again. Don't post that. But you could post, I still don't understand what you mean by, the difference between Chebyshev's and empirical rule on understanding normal distribution. How do you find out if it's normal? And that will help you. And I'll say, look at the histogram, see if it looks bell-shaped or not. Does that make sense? So you can ask me any questions about any component of the project as many times as you want. But the draft I'll only look at once. So be ready. Don't give me a first paragraph because that's your draft. And then I won't look at the rest. Does that make sense? Okay, that's pretty much everything I had to say about the project. Again, as you post in the project discussion forum, I'm happy to answer questions as you go. I'm also happy to answer questions now if you have questions. But I'm not going to give another webinar on the project. But I like to give an early one. Again, today is the 16th, so I'm not going to, we still have the 23rd and the 30th. Next week's webinar, I'm not going to do Tuesday because I want to vary it. So again, you can post when you want it. And in fact, I can look to see when it'll work. So I can show you my calendar. Minimum size is 2. If you can get 3, it's better. And Claudia needs a partner. So Chris, if you have 2, Claudia might want to join you. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's true, Claudia, but I just saw your post. So again, if you're 2, it'd be very nice if you could accept a 3rd if someone's looking for one. But I'm not going to force you to accept a 3rd. So notice I have nothing in the evening. So again, post Monday and Wednesday are the most likely nights because, again, we just did it Tuesday, so I don't want to always do it Tuesday because that cuts out anyone with a Tuesday class, for example, if they have or a Tuesday job or something. Okay. I could also do it lunchtime no one's asked for lunchtime, but it could happen. I don't do anything after 10 or even after 10 if you're tired.
Could you show, you said you were going to put a sample spreadsheet, or should we just follow the first webinar for that?
Oh, it's already there. Yeah, that was the first webinar. I could show it to you again if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could show it again.
Okay. Let me pop in my drive. Let me get my spreadsheet. It's still there. I haven't changed it since the first webinar.
How do you access that? Or do you just do it yourself?
That was here, remember?
Oh, yeah.
You can see starting out, first time you use this, you'll need to go to the link. Click that.
Perfect.
And then remember, and then it says, click file, make copy. For some reason, no one reads my instructions. I get so many questions about it, but it does say file, make a copy. So let me grab my spreadsheet. So sorry, internet is slow at the college in my little corner. Not everyone in the college. It hates me. So there's a sample spreadsheet. By the way, you're going to have a sample size bigger than 10.
Right.
So, and see this one var stats? Keep it at that tab. Don't go to any of the others, because that's for advanced stuff that we'll do later in this class. Okay, does that make sense? It's really easy. You just type in the number 9, for example, might be your next data number. It just does it for you. You have to know how to move your eyeballs and see that minimum is 0.8 and see that mean is 160. You read this word, change this. I keep saying it, but you know why I keep saying it? Because I'm so tired of having to take off points. Okay, does that make sense? Ignore skewness and kurtosis. We didn't cover this at all. Sum of squares, we don't cover any of that. I got that. Some other colleges wanted it, so I put it in. But most of the others are important. Any other questions? Any other questions? Again, I'm here until you guys get tired and have no questions. But I'm happy to answer questions. After this, you ask questions using the project discussion forum or Q&A if it's about how to do this assignment question, you know, chapter 1, problem 3 or something.
What's the maximum is how many people?
3.
3.
So if you have 4, split into 2 groups, and then ask to have one more, because there could still be more people that want a group. Okay, so 3 is better than 2 because it's less work, right? And also, if you have 2 and your partner drops, you're in trouble. Any other questions?
Yeah, so we have 3 in our group, and so Claudia, I'm sorry.
And also, I have a quick question. Do you think any example on how we should format our writing? I mean, I know that's kind of a lot to ask, like how, for you just write it out. But I know, I just don't
Okay, so yeah, I can give you a little bit of that. So first thing, introduction. Introduction, identify. You want to identify your survey question in the introduction. I would even put quotes around it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And identify who your client is. Identify who your population is. And identify why you care, or why your client cares. Why is this important? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Then you usually talk about how you sample. That's like the next paragraph. Make it very clear. Okay, I want to be able to see exactly what technique you use. You better use part of this project, by the way, is to see if you know how to use the language, the vocabulary words we've had in this chapter.
Okay.
So if you do stratified sampling and you don't have the word stratified sample, I'm going to take out points. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I need to see the language that we've got. Don't say average, say mean, for example. Does that make sense? Okay.
So, our client would be the people we're sampling, correct? Or not the people we're sampling, but the people who are interested in it and are population.
Yeah, the people or person. Sometimes it's just one person.
Right.
Yeah, people or person who's interested, who's hired you, who would pay you to do this project. Right. And again, that's hypothetical. I don't expect anyone to really pay you.
Yeah, hope not.
Right, but in the real world, that's how it works, right?
Yeah, but not yet.
Not yet. Right now, you're just learning how to get paid.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so then the next thing after talking about your sampling technique, then a lot of people talk about bias at that point. Okay, a lot of people talk about bias. What could have gone wrong? Just a note, bias, remember, and this is from the last week's post that you had to do, is not just you miss these people, but you miss these people, and these people probably would have answered lower or higher as a number. So therefore, it's likely that your mean that you've got for your sample mean is lower or higher, whatever you think it is, than the population mean. That's what bias is about. Does that make sense?
Wait, can you re-say that? I'm sorry.
Okay, so bias is about not just who you missed, but how that affects the mean. So for example, if you did some study on patients and how they recovered from, I don't know, how they recovered from some kind of ear surgery, right? You know, in terms of how long it took them to be able to listen again. You didn't get anyone who was type O positive. That's probably not bias at all. Because being type O positive has nothing to do with how long it takes you to heal after surgery for your ears. Does that make sense?
Right.
So if it doesn't have anything to do with your study, it's not bias. It's only bias if it's going to affect your mean in your sample compared to the population. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So talk about it. I want to hear the word lower or higher. Okay, the next thing you usually do is up to you. This is your order. I'm going to let you choose. Either go to your charts or go to your statistics. Order you do it is totally up to you. So remember the charts, stem and leaf, box and whiskers, and histogram. And possibly more, but those three for sure. Okay, you could go to those, talk about them, or you can go to the statistics, which was the minimum, the maximum, the mean, the Q1, Q3, IQR, standard deviation. Okay, and then talk about those. Okay, I don't care which order, but they're definitely separate paragraphs. Separate those out.
Each statistic study that we conduct, like, or
not every statistic is a paragraph. Standard deviation is its own paragraph.
right.
But don't put box plot and mean in the same paragraph. They're different. Does that make sense?
Right.
You know, that those are different concepts, so put them in different paragraphs. After talking about those two pieces, okay, which will take a lot of work, by the way. That's most of the paper right there. Then you move to the conclusion. Talk about the highlights. And typically how you would make your project better if you had more time and money and you could ask more questions, et cetera, et cetera. Better study techniques and stuff, better survey techniques. Does that help in terms of kind of a proper order?
Yeah, that helps a lot. And I was thinking, I know for biases, for like compensation, like I'll give you a piece of candy, and that could be like, oh, I could have given this person like $3 instead of giving them a piece of candy.
Yeah, but most people aren't going to give anything.
Yeah, I know. I'm just talking about, like, for my specific study, that could be talked about in the conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to give a piece of candy, yeah, you can talk about that. But then you're going to say, all right, the person that answered your study with just a piece of candy, how is that different than the person who answered the study that didn't, right?
Right.
Who would have answered it had you given them $10?
Right.
You see that?
Yeah.
So if that person who is not going to answer your study because with the piece of candy is more likely to have a lower answer, then you have bias. You see that?
Yes.
And that's the bias. So it's not just that you would have gotten more people, but what type of person would you have gotten? You see that?
Right.
Would that type of person had a higher answer or a lower answer?
Right.
Okay, and you will find standard deviation is the toughest. Any questions?
I have a question. I actually had some technical issues when I was trying to download your spreadsheet. So when I went to file, the only option that I could click on was, or like to make a copy of your spreadsheet, not download it.
Okay, what you do you have a Gmail account?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my suggestion. Try this. Open up Gmail
Okay.
and then try again.
Okay.
I know that sounds really weird, but what that does is it puts you into the Google system.
Okay, thank
Because
you.
you're making actually the copy into your Gmail account without you knowing it. Into your Google Cloud account is what you're really doing. And then if that still doesn't work, then I'll sit there with Zoom and do a screen share and see if that works. But that usually works, is open up Gmail and then do it. That's probably why it wasn't letting you.
Thank you.
Is it okay to survey our friends, or does it need to be at random?
If you only survey your friends?
No, I'm talking about like you survey it. Like, okay, so if I surveyed like 5 of my friends and then did 5 in the, like, just walking around school saying, hey, like.
So if you're doing a stratified sampling,
right,
then you can do that. If you're doing cluster sampling, you can't.
Perfect.
Do you see that, how that works? Because
Yeah.
cluster sample is, you've decided the clusters and you have to go to those clusters.
Right.
Stratified sampling, you just need to get your quotas.
Perfect.
Okay, but then if you're surveying your friends, remember stratified sampling, you only pick one strata. So there's going to be bias because you've surveyed your friends.
Right, but you could include that in your paper saying my biases are here.
In a way, that'll help you because it'll be easier to find bias.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But you have to show you understand stratified sampling though.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do. I'm kind of having the same problem with the formulas. Is it because I'm not doing it through Gmail? Is that what you said?
Try doing that and see if that works.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are all on computer, but you can try while we're talking and see if that works. Stephanie, did you try? No? Okay. I don't know if you're at your smartphone or computer. I don't know what you're doing, but it's hard for me to tell from this kind of view.
But if you copy it and save it as if you have Excel, it should still work, right?
Excel? It shouldn't have anything to do with Excel.
Okay.
It's Google. It's not Excel. It's not even the same company. Yeah. It's Google versus Microsoft.
Okay.
Yeah. Excel, this can be done in Excel, but it's going to be harder for you, I think, because it's not going to be all there for you like this.
Got it.
But if you're an expert in Excel, that's fine, as long as your partner's okay with it. If you're not an expert in Excel, I don't recommend it. Because I've done this in Excel, and I can do it. Okay, other questions? Okay, and just to know, only one of you needs to actually put it into this, because then you share it with each other, right? And there's a little share button. You hit share, and then you send the share link. Make sure you do an editable share when you share it, your partners, and then they can look at it and type things and do whatever they want with it. It's another reason why I like this better than Excel, is sharing is better.
Is there another secret word that we're supposed to have for the
Did you try and it gave you wrong?
Well, no. I have I entered it in, but then there was like there's a second one.
Oh, is there? Let me check quickly.
There's like a Monday chapters like 4. This is the second webinar, correct?
Oh, you know what? There might be a problem with that. That might be my mistake.
Okay, yeah, because I logged in and I was like, it's due the 28th though, so I thought I was gonna.
For today, there's only one webinar today. There's
Right.
only one secret word today.
There was 2. I just went in. I went into as soon as you gave it to me. I went in.
You went to modules?
I went to modules.
Let me double check. Could have been my mistake, but I thought there was only one secret word there. There could be 2 questions, and then I got to erase one of them. I'll do that.
Right.
We talk just a minute. Let's see. We're in week 2.
They said I think it went to.
Oh, you know what? It shouldn't give you anything yet.
Oh, I did the chapter 3 then. Ooh.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't even publish it yet.
There was
that's fine.
2. I think that says week 3. Are we on week 2?
Yeah,
I just-
week 2. It shouldn't have said, and now it should say that I didn't hit publish. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay.
Give you a week. It should have given you a week 2 one. In week 3, that shouldn't be there yet. There, now you won't see it. Yeah, you don't even go to the later week ones because there is no secret word yet.
All right, sweet. I just questioned
Week
that.
2, yeah, week 2. You're in the wrong week.
All right.
And there will be a secret word next week, but I haven't even decided what it is yet.
Perfect.
Other questions? Can you do an online survey through something like Facebook? It can if you use either cluster sampling or stratified sampling. But if you don't use one of those sampling techniques, you can't do it. And your population size has to be big. So that's just a note. So it has to be big, like at least 1,000. That's different than sample size. Technically, at least 1,500 in terms of good studies. Any other questions? Again, as always, I'm here until you're all gone. This is going to take a long time to upload onto YouTube, so I'm definitely going to go home before it's done because it's a long one today. Let's see. Thank you, Claudia.
Hidden on the secret quiz.
What's that?
What does it mean when secret answers are hidden?
What?
I put in what you
Let me
give.
see. Let me see.
Answers are hidden. Take quiz again. I think I got it. I want to make sure I got it.
There shouldn't be anything. I just did default. Let me see. Let me make sure there's nothing weird about it. Let's see incision.
I think I got it. If it says 1 out of 1, that means I got it correct, right? It just
Yeah, 1 out of 1 means it's right. That's a good thing. That's 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. It's supposed to be easy.
Okay.
I wonder if there's some setting here that's not good. Allow multiple attempts. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, everything should be right.
Cool.
So. Any other questions?
I signed in and it worked.
Oh, good. Yeah, so that's usually the little trick. Sign into your Google account, it usually works.
Thank you. Good night.
Right. Good night.
Okay, so I do have a question. So we kind of, the three of us girls kind of found like a common ground of like working out, exercise. So we're trying to find some kind of question. I'm going to email, they weren't on this one, but kind of email them about like a good question. You said that population has to be at least 1,000 to 1,500. So if we were to say some like, well, I'm not saying we're gonna do CrossFit, but like CrossFit in general, we could use our gym as like a sample of that, right?
Yeah, or you could do all potential customers at the gym. Since you use the word potential, then you got lots of people.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, well, we're not there at all, anywhere near that, but okay.
If you own it, you're hoping, right? But you could. But I bet you have more than 1,500 potential customers, right?
Yes.
Good.
All over Southern California.
Good. That's how you fit. That's how you fix that problem.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. I still see Sean and Linda. I can't unmute Linda, but there we go.
All right. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. No, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Good night.
Good night. And Sean?
Just a little more detail on the potential for the online survey. You kind of went over it pretty quick, so I wanted to
so for how do you do it online? So for example, you can if you can identify enough people that will answer. One thing, it's hard to get people to answer your question online.
Right.
And you can stratify it. So you establish your quotas, So then when you stratify with online, you're usually going to have to ask 2 questions. So for example, if you're stratifying by gender, you need to ask, what's your gender? You male or female, and then you ask your real question. Does that make sense? And then you keep going until you have your quotas.
Okay, because if I start it early, I should be able to get a lot of people, hopefully, to answer it.
Yeah. Now, my experience is online students are hard to get to answer.
Right. Well, I was thinking like I posted with a Facebook survey, which would go into a different set of population.
Right. If you have a lot of friends and friends that actually are on Facebook a lot, so they're actually going to answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
And people have used Facebook, by the way, for the survey.
Okay.
I actually had one that literally did the one time that was ever done right for a simple random sample. The person had 4,000 Facebook friends.
Wow.
And literally did a random sample using a computer-generated list of 31 of the Facebook friends chosen at random from the computer-generated list. But that's like impossible.
Right. Yeah, I don't have that many Facebook friends, so I don't know if that'll necessarily be an option, but I thought that would be a good question to ask.
You can use them as part of the study. And of course, remember, it's not you, it's you all, right? It's you and your partners.
Exactly, which is why I was thinking of trying to use that as part of it. Since I work full-time, it's hard for me to be able to get
Sure, and that you can do. Just make sure that you do a study at which it's more general people, because my guess is Facebook friends aren't all college students, for example.
A lot of them are actually.
You have enough Facebook college students that will work?
Either they're college students or prior college students.
Okay.
So.
Okay. But that's just a note that if you're going to do Facebook friends and you're doing college, the easiest, by the way, then if someone's not a college student, they can't answer your question. Does that make sense? Because they're not part of the population.
Okay, so basically the broader your population, the easier it is to have other people answer it then.
Yeah, up to a point. Like I said, all people in the world is a little rough because you're not going to get any study that's anywhere close to scientific.
Right, but maybe you could do like California or lower it down to that size of a population.
Yeah.
Because if we did students, I could at least ask 2 of the people in my household, besides myself.
Yeah.
They go to class.
As long as you're doing stratified and not cluster.
Okay.
Because cluster doesn't work. Because cluster is clusters. Does that make sense?
Right, it would be like, for instance, if you did 3 different classes, something like that.
Yeah.
Right, which would be difficult to have. I don't know. For me, it's difficult since I'm working full time, so I can.
And if necessary, you could have your partners do the surveying, and you do more of the writing. You know what I mean?
Right. I may end up having to talk to them about that just to see. So thank you for answering those questions. And, I'll try to attend the next meetings. Is there a place that we're posting specifically for what time frame we wanted?
Q&A form.
The Q&A form? Okay.
Yeah, next week I can make it. I like to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Otherwise, you don't have enough time to do the rest of the assignments.
Right, that makes sense.
And so Monday or Wednesday is what I'm thinking because we're doing Tuesday now. And I'm trying to make it so that if we always do Tuesday, then anyone who can't make Tuesday can never make it.
Okay. Now, if you did it a little bit earlier and I wouldn't be able to make the actual time, at least at the start, is it possible for you to jump in mid-lecture? Is that fine?
Sure. But then you might want to watch it as an archived at the end. I mean, the next day, at least the first 15 minutes or whatever.
Right, whatever you miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You have a good night.
You too. Have a good night. And for all of you who are watching this as an archived webinar, thank you for watching it. Don't forget the secret word. It's in the middle somewhere. And please post on the Q&A forum for regular old questions and the project discussion forum for project questions and your idea for your survey question and sampling. So have a wonderful night.